Greetings, agents. Today we're going to learn how to play the agents. If you backed us on our Kickstarter campaign, this is what you received. This is the black box. Inside you will find an instructional manual, which you won't be needing because we're showing you how to play the game, so check this out. And you will have 3 tuck boxes. One is the Agents tuck box, the other one is Missions tuck box, and the third one is Points. In the Agents tuck box you will find the Agents cards. In addition, our Kickstarter backers received these 4 art cards that were a bonus as a stretch goal, but they're not playable, so just put them to the side for now. And the rest is the Agents deck. Shuffle it, like so. And, whoops. And put it to the side of the table. That will be our Agents deck. The Mission tuck box includes the missions, but also some other goodies that we added on our Kickstarter campaign. Inside, you will find 8 commander cards. This is a free expansion that we included. They look like this. We'll explain how to play with them a bit later, so put them to the side. There are 5 player aid cards that look like this. In addition, we have 2 blank cards. This is me, and this is Danny, our illustrator. They're blank because it's up to you to decide their unique command and their points value, depending on how you want to play with us. And we have the 5 safe houses, each with unique graphics as part of our stretch goal, and they are used to denote the factions, and we'll show you how to set them up shortly. What is left are the missions, and we shuffle them like so, and we put them to the side of the table, and this is our missions deck. The last tuck box is the points. These are point cards, which you collect as you play the game. They come in 5 different denominations. There's the 2er, there's the 20er, there's the 5er, there's the 10er, and there's the 1er. And you use those in combination to collect points throughout the game. So this is the points deck, and we'll put that also next to the missions deck and the agents deck. So here's how you set up the game. If you are in a 2-player game, then you'll have 2 factions. Let's say I'm playing with this red friend. I will have 1 safe house in one faction and another safe house in another faction. The important thing to remember is that once I place the safe houses, I need one of them to have the black half data tokens facing me, but the other one has to have its white data token halves facing me, and those would be the 2 factions that we add agents to, and we'll show you how to do that a bit later. If I were to play a 3-player game, then I will have another opponent, and we would have 3 factions. I will have 1 faction between me and the player to my left. I will have another faction between me and the player to my right, and there's 1 additional safe house for the other faction that is going to be between these 2 players, like this. So each player has 2 black data token halves facing them and 2 white data token halves facing them. If I were to play 4 players, we just add another faction. So I add the black player, and I add 1 more safe house that is going to be placed like this. So we have 4 factions. Each player has a faction between the player to the right and a faction with the player to their left. These are their factions, and these are the only factions to which they are allowed to add agents. So here we are in a 3-player game. Before we start the game, each player receives 3 agent cards. So, and 1 mission card. The agents deck includes 2 types of agents. The first and main type of agent is the faction agent. A faction agent has a command at the bottom, that is the text, and at the top there's 2 data token halves. So I can add a faction agent from my hand to either one of my factions. I cannot add it to a faction that I don't share with any other player, this faction. And the interesting thing is that each agent card is double-edged, which means that I can choose which way to direct it. So I can place it like this, but I can also place it like this. When I place a faction agent like this, you can see that it completes a black data token. When I complete a data token that is just one color, for example black, it gives me, at the end of my turn, 2 intel points. I can also place the agent like this, and here it completes a data token that is half white and half black. This rewards me at the end of my turn only 1 intel point. I can also choose to place the faction agent like this. That will give my opponent 2 IPs at the end of their turn, but I now have access to the command. So what is a command? A command is an instruction that lets you manipulate the factions or other agents, and when someone places a card onto a faction, the player towards whom the command is facing must play the command, must activate the command if it can be activated. If it cannot be activated, nothing happens and you move on to your next action or to the next turn. So what abilities do these agents have? So the ability is capitalized, and we have 4 main abilities. We have the turn ability, we have the extract ability, we have the move ability, and we have the kill ability. The ability is part of the command that provides limitations on that ability. For example, here we have the assassin that can kill any agent in this faction. However, the gunner, which has the same ability, kill, can kill any agent in your other faction. So they have the same ability but different commands. The turn ability lets you rotate another agent 180 degrees. In this case, the Temptress lets you turn any agent in this faction. So, for example, if I were to place the Temptress here, like so, I will have to turn the gunner, the only agent in this faction, the only other agent in this faction, and I will turn it, which means I rotate it 180 degrees, which is good for me because I completed a non-matching data token, so at the end of my turn I will get 1 intel point. The extract command lets you pick up another agent from a faction into your hand. So for example, if I were to place the abductor from my hand in this faction so that its command is facing me, I will have to extract and therefore pick up another agent from this faction, my other faction. I can choose which one to pick up. Let's say I want to pick up the Temptress because it doesn't complete any data tokens that are directed towards me, so I pick up the Temptress. The move ability lets you move an agent from one location to another. So for example, the activist lets you move any agent in your other faction. So, for example, if I were to play the activist here, its command would be facing me, and I would have to move one of these agents to another location in this faction. So for example, I might want to choose to move the gunner here. If a gap is formed when you move an agent or extract an agent, for example like this, You basically close the gap by moving the other cards. When you move an agent, you must not change its orientation. So for example, with the decoy, let's say I place it here. The decoy lets me move one agent from this faction to my other faction. If I were to move the abductor, for example, in this faction, the abductor's command is facing me. So when I move it to my other faction, its command must also be facing me. The kill ability lets you flip over an agent and thus render it inactive. So for example, with the assassin, if I were to play the assassin in this faction, I would have to kill any agent in this faction, so any one of these three agents, and killing them would be flipping them over, and this is a dead agent. Dead agents cannot be turned, but they can be moved or extracted. When they're extracted, they automatically are revived and can be played from your hand into a faction. The paramedic has the revive ability, which lets you revive an agent. It's interesting to note that when you revive an agent with the paramedic, you choose which direction that agent is going to come alive to. So for example, if I were to play the paramedic here, I would revive this agent. I would actually have to revive this agent, and I can choose whether to revive it like this or like this. I would obviously choose to revive it like this because it completes a completely white data token, thus awarding me 2 IPs at the end of my turn. An agent's command cannot influence itself. So when you place an agent into a faction, its command can only influence other agents in that faction. So for example, in this situation, the Temptress can only influence the Gunner, whereas the Gunner's command can only influence the Temptress. As you can see, this faction has 5 agents in it. The limit for a faction is 5 agents. You cannot add agents to a faction that has 5 agents, but you can manipulate that faction, so you can extract, you can move, but there cannot be a faction with 6 agents. Dead agents also are part of the head count. So even if I had 2 dead agents here, this faction still has 5 agents, and therefore I cannot add more agents to it. In a 2-player game, the faction limit is 7 agents and not 5 agents. There is another type of agents in the agents deck, and those are the free agents. You will recognize them by having a complete data token and a number inside it. Free agents cannot be played into a faction. They are played towards any other player, even a player you don't share a faction with. And like faction agents, you can choose which way to direct them. So for example, the Interrogator has a steal command, which lets me steal an agent from another player. If I were to play the Interrogator like this, I would steal another card, agent card, from my yellow opponent, but they would get 3 IPs immediately, 3 intel points immediately. However, I can let them steal 1 agent from me, but I will be receiving 3 intel points immediately. In this case, for example, let's play it like this. Sorry, little yellow friend, I will steal an agent from you, but you get 3 IPs. After that, the free agent is retired to our retirement pile. It's important to note that free agents cannot be played if their command cannot be performed. So, mission cards. Missions are conditions that, if fulfilled, award you bonus IPs at the end of your turn. I can assign a mission to either one of my faction, and if their condition is fulfilled, then I receive the bonus points. For example, this mission is Bloodbath, and it gives me 3 bonus IPs if there are at least 2 adjacent dead agents in this faction. So, in this faction, there are no dead agents, so I won't be assigning this to this faction. But this faction has exactly 2 dead agents that are adjacent to each other. So if I were to assign Bloodbath to this faction, I would be getting 3 bonus IPs. For another example, my yellow opponent here has the mission Man Down. When they assign Man Down to the same faction, like this, they would be receiving 1 IP for each dead agent in this faction. So in this case, 2 dead agents, and that awards them 2 bonus IPs. It's important to note that each player can only assign up to 2 missions to each of their factions. So for example, I assign another mission, I cannot assign more missions. Also, I cannot assign 2 identical missions to the same faction, so I will not be able to do this because it's 2 identical missions. So for the turn sequence, each player has 2 actions, and they can choose any combination of 4 different things that they can do for each of the action. One of the things that they can do is they can play an agent from their hand into a faction. So for example, I will be playing the Assassin into this faction, and I immediately have to perform the command if it can be performed. In this case, it can, so I have to kill one of these other agents, and let's say I kill this one. Another thing that you can do on your action is reactivate a command as long as it's facing you. So in this case, the paramedic, its command is facing me, so I can choose to revive any dead agent in any of my faction. So I choose to revive this dead agent, and I will bring it back to life like this, or like this. If I use the reactivation action, for example, to turn an agent, or to move an agent, or to revive an agent, it's important to know that its command is not automatically reactivated. The command is only automatically reactivated when you play an agent from your hand into a faction. Another thing that I can do in my action is to buy an agent or buy a mission. If I want to buy an agent from the agents deck, I pay 1 intel point. So in this case, I will pay 1 intel point, and I will draw 1 agent. I can also buy a mission for 3 intel points, so I will be paying 3 intel points and buying myself a mission. Another thing that you can do in your action is trade in any number of missions. So for example, in this case I have 2 missions that don't really do anything for me, and I don't want them. So I'm using one of my actions to trade them in, which means that I retire them. I retire 2 missions, and I draw 2 new missions. So you can do any combination of the 4 actions that I explained on your turn. After I've performed my 2 actions, I'm moving to my mission phase. So with the mission phase, I can assign missions from my hand, or I can move missions between factions, or just remove them into my hand. This does not take up any action. I can do whatever I want with the missions. For example, in this case, I will assign one of my missions to this faction, and that concludes the mission phase. It's important to note that missions and the data tokens, as long as they're on the board, keep benefiting you in subsequent turns. So if this mission is fulfilled, for as long as it's fulfilled, at the end of my turn I will get the bonus points. Also, data tokens on my factions, if they are not broken up, at the end of my turn they will be awarding me extra intel points. At the end of my turn, after the missions phase, I receive my IPs from both my factions and from the missions if they are fulfilled. So I'm looking at the situation here, and I'm seeing that in this faction I have 1 completed non-matching data token, so a data token that has 1 white half and 1 black half, and it's directed towards me, so that rewards me 1 intel point. In addition, I have Bloodbath, which is fulfilled, so there are 2 adjacent dead agents here, so I get an addition 3 intel points, so that would be 4 from this faction. Here I have 1 completed matching data tokens, so a data token that is completely white, and that awards me 2 intel points, so that would be a total of 6 intel points. In addition, meet your match, which is also fulfilled. Data token in this faction yield the same number of IPs for both players, so the red player receives from this faction the same number of points that I receive, so I receive another 2 bonus intel points, so in total I receive 8 intel points, which I take from the points deck. So how do you win the agents? You get the most IPs, intel points. The game enters its final phase once a player reaches 40 or more points. So for example, in this game, I have 32 points, and at the end of my turn, I'm collecting 8 points from my factions, so I'll be collecting 8 more points. And then I get to 40 points at the end of my turn. However, because I was the first player, the player who started the game, I had more turns than my other players, so the game continues until each player had the same number of turns. So in this case, the red player and the yellow player get to have a turn until it gets back to me, and at that point, whoever has the most number of intel points is the winner. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll enjoy playing the game.